Desert landscapes, political intrigues, economic games. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, Dune makes for one of the greatest masterpieces in the history of science fiction, serving as inspiration for countless authors and writers ever since its publishing, such as the George Lucas who revolutionized the movie scene with his creature Star Wars. Gaining definitions such as science fiction's Lord of the Rings or the Iliad of the future, Dune stands as a turning point for a genre, science fiction, which at the moment of its releasing was gaining major recognition but was still somehow limited by the strictly technological imagery and the short story format. The adventure of the young Paul Atreides fits in this context as a futuristic heir of the great heroes from the Greek and Latin epic literature, unique combination between the classics and a new way of writing and imagining the future. Dune is undoubtedly the greatest achievement of its author Frank Herbert. Born in Washington, USA in the early 20s, Herbert manages to get away from his humble origins and moves to Oregon in order to attend to his basic education. Before taking up the writing career, he works as a journalist and during World War II as a photographer. His research and his contacts allow him to delve into subjects such as Jungian and Freudian psychology, as well as Zen philosophy or Eastern culture. Enthusiastic reader of science fiction, in the 50s he decides to try and get writing himself, producing some relatively successful short stories. By the end of the 50s, Frank Herbert is already over 40, and he fears that his work in literature won't be enough for him to leave a significant mark. That's why he starts a long and extensive research for the novel that will become, in 1964, his masterpiece, Dune. Dune becomes expression of its author's knowledge and passion, ranging from psychology to ecology, from anthropology to philosophies and religions. Frank Herbert makes use of this and much more to create from scratch a vast, coherent and constantly moving universe. In addition, unlike most other sci-fi writers at the time, Herbert's not really interested in imagining plausible technological advancements to define his vision of the future. He concentrates on the human element, his point being to demonstrate how both mental and physical skills can be enhanced and used to make the difference. Space travel, for one thing, is not achieved by developing some technological marvel, but thanks to human beings who can manipulate space-time with the aid of a powerful substance. Such substance, essential to Frank Herbert's universe, is called spice or melange, and spice only grows on the surface of a single planet, Arrakis, aka Dune. The entire plot of the novel takes on from these premises. The young Paul Atreides starts his journey when the noble house Atreides, led by Paul's father Duke Leto, takes over the rights to manage the spice harvesting operations on Arrakis. When the schemes staged by Emperor Padishah Shaddam IV are put into action and the old enemies of House Harkonnen are successful in defeating the Atreides in a battle that causes the death of the Duke himself and that of most of Paul's friends and mentors, the boy finds himself abandoned in the middle of the desert with his mother Jessica. Their survival is only assured thanks to the help from Dune's native population, the Fremen. The latter, together with the planet Arrakis, are the crowning achievement of the writer. In the creation of the former, Herbert availed himself of a detailed research on traditions, customs and religions from the Middle East, and in imagining the planet, he used all of his knowledge in the fields of biology and ecology, establishing a convincing and plausible ecosystem in which the growing of the spice is directly linked to the life cycle of the gigantic sandworms. Paul becomes part of his context as a messianic figure of sorts, the fulfilling of an ancient prophecy that predicted the arrival of a stranger who would unify the tribes and conquer the planet. In this phase, the narration of the events in the book takes on a somehow biblical style. He manages to unlock his full potential both in body and in mind, and after 2 years of warfare against the evil Harkonnen, when the Emperor comes with his legions to reinforce the all but defeated family, the final confrontation begins. Knowing how the ecology of the planet works, Paul threatens to destroy the flowering of the spice permanently, forcing the Space Guild to choose his side and the Emperor and his forces to surrender. Dune inspired many prequels and sequels, written both by Frank Herbert himself and after his departure by his son Brian. and also many movies, TV conversions and video games. When it comes to cinema and television, many projects have been started and dismantled with the years. Only 2 successful adaptations were actually finalized. The first one, a movie directed by David Lynch and released in 1984 by the Italian company of Dino De Laurentiis, is nothing but a demonstration of how hard it can be to concentrate the insane amount of details and characters of the novel in the space of a 2-hour movie. Receiving a negative feedback by critics and fans alike, and considered almost a failure by the director himself, the movie pictures an eccentric and grotesque world that can be hard to swallow, especially for those who are not familiar with the book. According to most fans, the film is unsuccessful in recreating that peculiar spirit that animates Frank Herbert's Dune. Lynch's movie changes the plot in many ways, focusing mostly on the first half of the book, from the Atreides' establishment on Arrakis to their defeat against their enemies, and almost ignores the rest of the story, where Paul mingle with the Fremen and learn of their ways. Most of the fascinating features of the people of the desert remain completely unknown in the movie, and the considerations about the figure of Paul Muad'Dib as a messianic element are all but non-existent. The meaning of the name Muad'Dib itself is misinterpreted, since in the book, Paul chooses his name looking at the little smart mouse of the desert, while in the movie the name is taken from one of the moons of the planet that Paul often pictures in his dreams. Moreover, in the book, Paul and Jessica can fight using a technique that allows to move every single muscle of the body, requiring intense training and discipline of both body and mind. This technique will be taught to the Fremen and will enable them to win against the Emperor's Legion. In the movie, Paul owns an array of strange laser pistols that use a person's thoughts as fuel to fire amazing exploding ammunitions. The stronger the thought, the more powerful the blast. Interesting, if not eccentric, idea. But wasn't Dune supposed to be about the human element rather than the technology? In the movie, Princess Irulan works as a narrator of sorts, and the viewers often find themselves picturing the dreams and visions of Paul and hearing the thoughts of many other characters, sort of an out-of-field voice. These details were maybe interesting at the time of filming, but now, after 30 years, they make the movie even more difficult to approach. Visually, the film suffers from the lack of a higher budget, in a moment when special effects were not perfected. Even for a movie from the 80s, though, it appears far less pleasant and refined than other famous films such as Star Wars, and it features some quite questionable scenes, such as the one in which Paul fights for his mentors Gurney Halleck using his shield, played by the great Patrick Stewart. For the sake of curiosity, it should be mentioned that the famous singer Sting has a part in the movie, as the extravagant Feet Rotha.